Have you ever felt like a ghost in your own life? As if your presence, your contributions, your very essence, could be erased from the world without leaving so much as a ripple in its wake? You speak, and the words seem to dissolve into static before they are ever truly heard. You offer your best work, your deepest insights, your most authentic self, and yet the offering is received as if it were mere air, weightless and insignificant. This is the quiet, persistent agony of being undervalued, a psychic state of invisibility that hollows you out from the inside. You begin to question your own substance, wondering if you are merely a phantom haunting the periphery of other people's more solid realities. This experience is not a simple frustration. It is a profound existential ache, a dissonance that signals a deep fracture between who you know yourself to be and how the world insists on reflecting you back to yourself. You have been meticulously conditioned to believe this is a problem of performance, a failure in your personal marketing strategy. The solution, you are told, is to project louder, to package yourself more attractively, to learn the intricate dance of social leverage in order to finally command the validation you so desperately crave. But this is a fundamental and tragic misdiagnosis of your condition. The crushing weight of indifference you feel from the external world is not the cause of your suffering. It is merely a symptom. The void you feel is not an absence of their attention, but a direct consequence of an absence of your own. The journey to reclaim your value, to become solid in your own existence, is not an external campaign for approval, but a radical, internal excavation into the very foundations of your own psyche. But this feeling of being adrift has a source, a hidden force in your own mind, and today we are going to name it. If this initial truth resonates deep within your being, commit to this process now. Comment, "I seek my totality," to begin this journey. Of course, here is Act 2, written according to your precise specifications. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Hash, 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 Act 2, the archetypal journey through the psyche, Thomas Block 2, 1. The illusion of the other's gaze. The great philosophical entertainer, Allan often pointed to a fundamental paradox of human consciousness, which he termed the backwards law. This principle asserts that the more you consciously strive for something, the more it seems to flee from your grasp. The desperate pursuit of pleasure, for instance, only highlights its absence, creating anxiety. The frantic effort to secure your own ego only makes you more insecure. This law is the very engine of your current suffering. The relentless campaign you wage to command respect and validation from the external world is the purest demonstration of this principle in action. It is a psychic posture of grasping, of needing, of demanding that the world fill a void that you perceive. But the universe, in its impersonal wisdom, does not respond to neediness. It responds to being. The more you try to force the world to see you, the more you broadcast your own sense of invisibility. Therefore, you must understand that your desire to make those who ignore you desperate for your presence is a symptom of profound psychic dependency. You have tethered your sense of self-worth to the volatile and uncontrollable court of outside opinion. Your emotional stability rises and falls with their fleeting attention, making you a slave to their gaze. This is not a position of power, it is the definition of psychic poverty. You have been pouring your life force, your invaluable energy, into a performance for an audience that may never applaud. This constant outward projection leaves your inner world neglected and barren. The first attitude of self-possession, then, is not an action you must take, but an exhausting performance you must finally cease. It is the conscious, deliberate withdrawal of your energy from the external stage. The initial step on this path is to let the stage go dark. This is not a manipulative tactic designed to punish others with your absence. It is a sacred act of reclaiming your own focus. You must stop explaining, stop justifying, and stop auditioning for a role in someone else's life. This cessation will feel terrifying to the ego, which has been conditioned to believe that its survival depends on being seen and approved of. It will feel like a death. But it is only in this self-imposed silence, this turning away from the mirror of the other, that you can begin the true work. You are not ceasing the performance to change them. You are ceasing it to finally meet yourself. This is the first, non-negotiable step toward building an unshakable inner foundation. Tom's Clock 3, 2. the echo chamber of the psyche. Analytical psychology operates on a foundational premise. The external world is not a random series of events that happens trans you, but rather a symbolic reflection of your internal state. The people, circumstances, and conflicts you encounter are mirrors, showing you the contents of your own unconscious mind. The pervasive indifference you perceive from others is therefore not an objective judgment of your worthlessness. It is a precise, painful echo of the indifference you have been showing to vast, disowned territories of your own psyche. The world is simply playing back a recording of your own internal dialogue of self-rejection. It is a diagnostic tool of unparalleled accuracy, pointing you directly toward the parts of yourself that you have exiled. This is a difficult truth to accept, as it dismantles the comforting illusion of victimhood. You see, the colleagues who dismiss your ambition are only giving voice to the part of you that has judged your own drive as inappropriate or too aggressive. The relationships that fail to see your true strength are mirroring the ways you have repressed that same strength, labeling it as unfeminine or unmasculine or simply unsafe. Every time you feel unseen, it is a direct signal that there is a part of you that you are refusing to see. To attempt to change this reflection by polishing the mirror, by trying harder, being nicer, or performing more flawlessly is an act of profound futility. The only way to change the reflection is to transform the object being reflected. This requires a radical shift in focus, away from the frustrating external world and into the disquieting silence of your own inner landscape. This journey inward is the only path to reclaiming your power. It demands that you cease your frantic efforts to manage external perceptions and instead begin the courageous work of internal excavation. You must be willing to ask the difficult questions. What parts of myself have I deemed unacceptable? What ambitions have I buried for fear of judgment? What power have I disowned to make others feel more comfortable? The answers to these questions are waiting for you in the shadows of your psyche. The world's indifference is not your enemy. It is your guide. It is a signpost pointing you away from the barren lands of external validation and toward the fertile, hidden kingdom of your own soul. The next step is to meet the regent of that kingdom. Nimes, Block 4-3. The confrontation with your shadow. We now arrive at the very heart of your existential predicament, the central axis around which your reality of being undervalued revolves. The source of this psychic schism was given a name by the pioneering psychologist Carl Jung, the shadow. The shadow is a universal archetype, representing the totality of the unconscious. More specifically, it is the repository for everything within yourself that you have repressed, denied, and disowned. It contains all the parts of your personality that your conscious ego, conditioned by family, culture, and society, has deemed unacceptable. It is your raw, untamed creativity, your unapologetic ambition, your righteous anger, your capacity for setting firm boundaries, and your sovereign instinctual nature. It is not evil. The shadow is pure, neutral psychic energy that has been locked away in the dungeon of your unconscious. You have spent your entire life running from this powerful, essential part of yourself. You have been taught to fear its intensity, to be ashamed of its desires, and to deny its very existence. This act of self-rejection, this internal civil war, is the primordial wound that bleeds out into the world as a desperate need for external approval. You seek validation from others because you have refused to validate the most potent parts of yourself. The feeling of being a ghost in your own life is the direct consequence of having turned your own most vital aspects into ghosts. The path to becoming whole, what Jung called the process of individuation, does not begin by trying to destroy this shadow. It begins by having the immense courage to turn, face it, and begin a dialogue. This confrontation is the midpoint of your entire psychological journey. It is the moment the hero, armed with new awareness, turns away from the external world and ventures into the cave to face the dragon. But in this story, the dragon is not a monster to be slain. It is a guardian of a treasure you have lost, your own wholeness. The integration of this disowned self is the only path to genuine self-possession. It is the alchemical process of turning the lead of your repressed fears and perceived flaws into the gold of authentic power. Your suffering is not a sign of your deficiency. It is the call of the shadow, begging to be seen, heard, and brought home into the light of your consciousness. Times Block 5, 4. The alchemy of strategic silence. Having acknowledged the existence of the shadow, your next attitude must be the cultivation of a profound strategic silence. This is not the passive-aggressive, silent treatment weaponized to manipulate or punish another person. That is an ego game, rooted in the very need for external reaction that you are trying to transcend. This is an active, internal, and sacred listening. It is the deliberate cessation of the noise of performance. By stopping your constant attempts to explain your value, justify your existence, and prove your worth to the external world, you create a psychic vacuum. It is a stillness that is both unnerving and potent. Into this newly created vacuum, the whispers of the long-ignored shadow can finally begin to rise and be heard. This silence will feel profoundly uncomfortable, perhaps even terrifying, to your conscious ego. The ego is addicted to activity, to the noise of striving, and to the feedback loop of external perception. To be silent is to risk not existing in the eyes of others, which the ego equates with death. But as Allan would suggest, it is only in the silence between the notes that music finds its form and meaning. Similarly, your true, integrated self can only emerge from the stillness you are now brave enough to inhabit. This silence is an act of trust. It is a declaration to your own psyche that you are finally ready to listen not to the clamor of the world, but to the deep, resonant truths that exist within you. In this quiet space, you can begin to ask the essential questions directly to your shadow. What does it want? What vital messages has it been trying to send you through your feelings of frustration, anger, and insignificance? What power does it hold? This is not a metaphorical exercise. It is a genuine dialogue with a living, intelligent part of your own being. The practice of strategic silence shifts the entire locus of authority from the external world to your internal world. You stop seeking answers from those who have none to give and begin listening to the only source that has ever truly mattered, the totality of your own psyche. This listening is the necessary precursor to the next, most crucial, alchemical stage. Times Block 6, 5. The integration of disowned power. Listening to the shadow is the first step, but the ultimate goal is integration. This is perhaps the most misunderstood aspect of analytical psychology. Integration is not about unleashing your dark side or giving yourself permission to act on every destructive impulse. That is not integration. It is possession by an unconscious complex. True integration is a conscious, alchemical process of reclaiming raw, neutral psychic energy and putting it in service of the whole person. It is about acknowledging the function and wisdom of the parts you have disowned. You must look at the contents of your shadow not as monstrous flaws, but as untapped and distorted potentials that are vital for your wholeness. This requires immense moral courage and a radical shift in self-perception. To begin this process, you must engage in a conscious dialogue with these exiled parts. If you have repressed your anger, for example, integrating it doesn't mean becoming an angry person. It means reclaiming the potent energy that anger represents. The power to set firm, non-negotiable boundaries, to say no, and to protect your own psychic space. If you have repressed your ambition out of a fear of being seen as arrogant, integrating it means giving yourself permission to consciously and unapologetically pursue your highest goals. You must learn to see the positive intent behind these shadow aspects. The rage was a cry for respect. The envy was a signal of your own dormant potential. The selfishness was your soul's desperate plea for self-care. This is the most challenging and rewarding work a human being can undertake, to look at the very parts of themselves they were conditioned to hate, and instead of casting them out, offer them a seat at the table of their own consciousness. You must ask them what they need and what wisdom they hold for you. This act of internal diplomacy begins to heal the schism that has caused all your external suffering. It is the beginning of becoming an ally to yourself, of assembling your full psychic army. As you reclaim these disowned energies, you are no longer a fragmented being seeking completion in others. You are becoming a unified, whole, and self-contained force. Nimes Block 7, 6. The cultivation of true indifference. As you consistently practice the art of shadow integration, a new and profound psychic state begins to emerge organically from within you, genuine indifference. This is not the cold, bitter, or resentful indifference of a wounded ego pretending not to care. That is a fragile defense mechanism. This is the serene, unshakable peace that comes from true self-possession. It is the deeply embodied realization that your sense of worth, is an internal, non-negotiable constant, entirely independent of external praise or criticism. It is a quiet power that emanates from a psyche that is no longer at war with itself. You have ceased to be a house divided, and therefore the storms of the outside world can no longer threaten your foundation. Allan Watts famously taught that the art of living is neither careless drifting on the one hand nor fearful clinging on the other. He likened it to learning to surf. You don't control the waves, but you learn to ride them with balance and skill. This is the essence of true indifference. You stop trying to control the unpredictable waves of other people's opinions, moods, and projections. Their validation, their criticism, their approval, their desperation, it all becomes mere data, as emotionally neutral as the weather report. It is information that you can observe without being capsized by it. Your emotional center of gravity has made a permanent shift from the chaotic external world to the still, solid center of your own integrated being. This state of sovereign indifference is the signature of a fully individuated psyche. You are no longer a ship tossed on the seas of social approval, desperately seeking a safe harbor in the validation of others. You have become the entire ocean. You contain the calm and the storm, the light and the dark. The frantic need to be seen and understood evaporates, not because you have given up, but because you have finally and completely seen and understood yourself. This self-possession radiates a quiet confidence that is far more compelling than any loud performance could ever be. You are no longer seeking to be filled, because you have finally realized you are already whole. Block 8. 7. The birth of self-sovereignty. The culmination of this internal work, the withdrawal from the other's gaze, the dialogue with the shadow, and the cultivation of true indifference, is the birth of self-sovereignty. This is a state of being where your identity, your worth, and your emotional state are generated and sustained from within. You are no longer a psychic colony, dependent on an external empire for your resources and sense of legitimacy. You have become your own nation, with your own laws, your own culture, and your own unshakable sense of place in the universe. This is not arrogance or narcissism. Those are states born from a deep insecurity that still requires an external audience. Self-sovereignty is quiet, grounded, and requires nothing from anyone. In this state, the very nature of your interactions with the world is transformed. Because you no longer need approval, you are free to connect with others authentically. Because you no longer fear rejection, you are free to express your true thoughts and creative impulses without apology. Your actions cease to be calculated moves in a complex game of social chess, and instead become genuine expressions of your integrated self. This authenticity is incredibly rare and possesses a unique gravitational pull. People are not drawn to the performance of confidence. They are drawn to the quiet reality of a person who is at peace with their own totality, including their darkness. This self-sovereignty is the true power you were unconsciously seeking all along. The desire to make others desperate for you was simply the ego's distorted, immature interpretation of a much deeper spiritual yearning, the yearning to be whole and free within your own skin. By establishing this internal locus of control, you have fulfilled that sacred impulse. You have become the ultimate authority in your own life. You are the source of your own validation, the arbiter of your own worth, and the master of your own psychic kingdom. This is the unshakable foundation upon which a life of meaning and purpose is built, a foundation that no amount of external indifference can ever erode. Nose, Block 9. 8. The climax of comprehension, individuation. This is the moment of ultimate revelation, the climax of your internal journey. You must now understand with every cell of your being that the goal was never, ever to make them desperate. That was a shallow, illusory desire born from a fractured and needy ego. The true goal, the unconscious, driving yearning of your soul all along, was to achieve what Carl Jung called asterisk individuation. Individuation is the process of becoming an individual, a whole, undivided, and fully integrated human being. It is the lifelong project of the psyche to become that which it was always meant to be. The attitudes we have explored are not a list of behavioral tricks to manipulate external reality. They are the sequential, alchemical stages of this sacred internal transformation. By withdrawing your psychic projections, by turning to face your own disowned shadow, and by consciously integrating its power into the light of your awareness, you have healed the fundamental schism within your own psyche. This act of internal unification is the only victory that has ever mattered. You no longer need anything from the external world, not its praise, not its attention, not its validation, because you have finally learned how to give yourself everything you were seeking from it. You have become your own source. You are present, you are whole, and you are self-validated. This state of being radiates a natural, effortless gravitational force, a quiet authority that is infinitely more powerful than any desperate attempt to be noticed ever could be. This is the great paradox of the human condition, as Allan so often articulated. The frantic grasping for security and control only leads to more anxiety and chaos. It is only by letting go, by surrendering to the totality of your own being, light and shadow, that you find true, unshakable ground. You did not set out on this journey to win their game of approval and rejection. You embarked on it to render their game completely irrelevant. You have exited the matrix of social validation and entered the sovereign reality of your own soul. The feeling of being undervalued has dissolved, not because they finally see your value, but because you have finally, irrevocably, claimed it for yourself. Act 3, the synthesis of individuation, 9chan, Block 10. The summary of transformation, and final call to action. You began this journey as a phantom, a ghost haunting the edges of your own existence, convinced that your substance was granted only by the gaze of others. You have now come to understand the profound truth. The indifference you faced from the world was never a judgment of your worth, but a perfect reflection of your own internal division. The emptiness was the echo of your own self-abandonment. By turning your focus inward, you have ceased to be a passive victim of external perception and have stepped into the role of the conscious architect of your own psyche. You have learned that the key to being seen by the world is to first have the immense courage to see all of yourself. This is not a strategy. It is a fundamental reordering of your reality, a shift from seeking value to embodying it. The shadow, once perceived as a monstrous antagonist dwelling in the darkness, is now revealed as the guardian of your lost power. Your journey is no longer about running from this essential part of you, but about engaging in a continuous, lifelong dialogue with it. This is the sacred process of individuation. It is the courageous work of listening to its wisdom, reclaiming its raw energy, and integrating its strength into the totality of your being. You are no longer a house divided against itself. You are assembling your full psychic potential, becoming an ally to the very parts of yourself you were taught to fear. This ongoing integration is the source of true self-sovereignty, building an unshakable inner foundation that no external storm can ever erode. Your wholeness is not a destination to be reached, but a state of being to be cultivated. And here lies the ultimate paradox. In ceasing your desperate performance for an external audience, you become authentically compelling. In cultivating a genuine indifference to the opinions of others, you earn their unsolicited respect. The initial ego-driven desire to make the world desperate for your presence has dissolved, not because you failed, but because you have transcended the very need that birthed it. The true victory was never to win their game of validation and rejection. It was to become so whole within yourself that their game becomes entirely irrelevant to your peace. The world may or may not change in its response to you, but it no longer matters. You did not set out to capture their attention, but to achieve your own freedom. This is not an end. It is the beginning of your conscious participation in your own becoming. You now possess the foundational tools to navigate the vast inner landscape of your psyche. The dialogue with the shadow continues, and with each act of integration, you become more fully and unapologetically yourself. You understand now that the universe does not grant you what you want. It mirrors back to you what you are. Your totality awaits you, and the great work of a lifetime has just begun. If this message has resonated with your quest, subscribe to the channel to deepen your journey. Share this knowledge with another who needs to find their own path.